Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts for Digital Breakout 130. This is a continuation of the Charles Lamanna session, Build Agile Business Processes with Power Apps. We'll go over some quick housekeeping items and then get started with your questions. Please go ahead and start typing your questions in the chat box, and our experts will get going on those. Quick note on how to engage with us. Please feel free to start typing questions in the chat. Those will appear to all the attendees once we have gone through the process with our moderator. You can vote for your favorite questions using the thumbs up sign. That will let our experts know that more than one of you has the same question, and then we will respond to you verbally and or over chat. Our experts will also be providing some resources in the chat throughout the session so that you know additional ways to learn about all the resources that we have for you. So at this point, I'm just quickly going to remind you that our session is being recorded. We kindly ask that you do not spam us or post inappropriate comments in the chat. We are doing our best to get to as many questions as quickly as we can. And please kindly adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. It is posted in the chat and here on the screen. As a reminder, the session is being recorded and it will be posted for reviewing later. We ask that you not record or take pictures on your side. And with that, I will hand it over to Ryan to kick us off and introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Jones. I'm the Director of Program Management for the Common Data Service, as well as CDS Project Oakdale. I also work a lot with Power Apps and Flows and Power Virtual Agent, and so more than happy to answer any questions that you may have for us this evening. I see first question of today. Andrew asked a wonderful question. Will the Power Apps, Power Automate Flows, and CDS used to develop solutions within a team exist within a separate Power Platform environment created for each team? And that's exactly right, Andrew. So when you go into a given team environment and you create your Power App and Oakdale environment, we create for you an Oakdale environment. And the flows, the apps, the tables that you create within that team are contained within that particular Oakdale environment. So think of it as one Oakdale environment per team. So I hope I was able to answer your question, Andrew. We'll move on to our next question. Let's see. Will the members of a team have edit access to the entities within CDS and be able to modify the data outside of the Power App flow created within the team? Oh gosh, Andrew, so great question. There's actually two parts of that. I think the first part of that question is kind of what level of permissions users have within CDS Project Oakdale. And today, the permissions that people have are fairly high level. They aren't that granular in nature, and that users that are members within the team will be able to both modify the shape of the tables in Oakdale, as well as will be able to add or remove records from those tables within Oakdale. Now, in the coming weeks and months, we will be enhancing that so that there is a level of distinction between who can edit the shape of the tables versus who can interact with the data within those tables. And so we have several more things coming there that you'll see lighting up here over the next few weeks as we progress in public preview. I think the other question was, is Oakdale accessible from outside of Teams, let's say through a standalone Power App? And the answer is not today. CDS Oakdale is very focused on being used to provide a low-code data platform for your application flow, so on and so forth, but only in the context of Teams. So hope I was able to answer both parts of that question. Let's see. The next question is from Daniel. Daniel asks, can I export an app created from a Power Apps Webmaker environment to a Teams environment? And the answer to that is not yet. And even in the fullness of time, it would depend on what dependencies you take within that solution, because when we think about the types of environments that oftentimes support like full Power Apps, a lot of times those include things such as entities that come as a part of the full common data model, which may not necessarily be available within your Oakdale environment. However, we do believe that it's very important that people be able to complete proper application lifecycle management operations for their Oakdale environments. And so that will be something that you'll be able to do in the not too distant future. Sherwin asks a great question. Who will be the admins of Project Oakdale environments? And there's a great question there. And I think it's good for us to distinguish admins because there are different types of admins. You have admins who are administrators across many environments, and then you have admins that are highly privileged within a single environment. Your roles like your Power Platform admins, your tenant admins, your global admins, they will have high levels of privileges across all of the environments that are created. And that goes for whether it's an Oakdale environment or not. However, when we think about within a specific environment, the team owners is aligned to the system administrators group within the CDS Oakdale environment, meaning that team owners within an environment, or I'm sorry, team owners within a team have very high degree of permissions within the Oakdale environment. The thinking behind that is if someone's able to create and delete a team along with all the resources within that team, they should also have full access to manage what is in that team. So I hope that I was able to answer your question, Sherwin. Let's see. Next question. What are the limitations of apps built in Teams? That is a fun question. I think that when we think about like the Power Apps runtime that we have there, when we think about actually, there's a great example that comes immediately to mind. When we look at what we're able to do today within Teams, we're currently focused on Canvas Power Apps. We do anticipate and plan to bring model-driven apps to within Teams as well, but that's not something that we're able to do today. When we think about what we do with Flow or other types of Power Platform technologies, you can do most of the things that you would normally do within an Oakdale environment. Now, when it comes to CDS Oakdale itself, our low-code data platform, there are very distinct sets of capabilities that we have between CDS Project Oakdale and CDS Full, or the paid version of CDS that you get when you purchase Power Apps. This would include things like our rich hierarchical security model. It would include things like some of our advanced ProDev capabilities like plugins. It would also include things like our very powerful integration with Azure for pushing events to Service Bus or Event Hub or exporting data to Data Lake. But that isn't necessarily a function of Teams and the apps being in Teams. It's more a function of whether or not a given environment has CDS Project Oakdale or if it's been promoted to the full version of the Common Data Service. So I hope I was able to answer your question there, Sherwin. Let's see. Gosh, there was a question from Anonymous about expanding on the demo with the Toyota line of business application. Was that Power Apps portal? I apologize. I actually don't know the answer off the top of my head, but that'd be something. I believe we have a form where you can submit questions for follow-up offline. Sharon, if you could post that link so that folks can see it. Anonymous can ask us that question and we'll get back to them with an answer. Next question, can we access the application using the regular Power Apps Studio? Also a good question, not yet. Today, the applications that you build within Teams, you can edit within the nice WYSIWYG table editor or that embedded Power Apps editor. We've not yet lit up the round tripping between full Studio versus the embedded version of the Studio that we have within Teams. Let's see. Our next question is from Lako. Hi, I have too many questions. How can you build Oakdale Power Apps? Have a few candidates that use CDS and would love to convert. Docs, Can it be linked to AppSource, the commercial marketplace? So, gosh, where to start there? So the first thing is, how can you build Oakdale Power Apps? I would start, we have a great, if you look at the Power Apps blog, you can see where we announced the public preview of CDS Project Oakdale, and you can find links to our documentation that will give you an overview of Oakdale and help you on how to get started, okay? And so you can start kicking the tires. As we are in preview, I don't know if I would recommend converting any of my production applications over to it just yet, but you can certainly, kick the tires and get the feel of Oakdale there. As far as whether or not these applications can be published to AppSource, that is something that we anticipate that we'll be able to do in the fullness of time, but we're not there yet today. Do note, though, that we have several of the out-of-box applications. We spoke about how T-Mobile customized one of those earlier today. You can pull some off-the-shelf applications today and install them into your Oakdale environment. Let's see, Jerry asked a question. How do I get to have CICD pipelines for Power Apps applications? That's a great question, Jerry. In fact, one of the things that we announced today was the availability of GitHub Actions for Power Apps. And what this does is this integrates with, it builds a bridge, if you will, between GitHub Actions and the Power Platform Solutions capability so that you're able to integrate your CI/CD pipelines with what you have running within the Power Platform. And this allows you to very quickly and easily take applications and move them between dev, test, prod environments in a way that is familiar to the pro devs that you're likely working with if you're looking into CI and CD scenarios. Andrew asked a question. Will Power BI use team security at some point, used for managing access to Power Apps or flows developed within Project Oakdale? If we attach Power BI dashboards to a team where a Power App solution has been developed. So that's a great question, and it's going to depend on the data source that you are using to power your Power BI dashboards. If, for example, you were through, let's say, for example, you were connecting your Power BI dashboard to a data source which supported Office Modern Group-based security, as well as a data source that supported direct query, then yes, what will happen is the identity of that user will flow from team to the Power BI dashboard, and then will flow through a direct query connector to the data source, which happens to support Office Modern Groups, as well as support direct query. So there'll be some cool things coming up in the next several weeks here actually in this area, so stay tuned. Let's see, Jonas asked a question. CDS versus Dataflex, is it the same or, I think I lost my question, or is it different? So CDS Project Oakdale is what we had announced under a different name several weeks back. However, that is distinct from our full version of the Common Data Service, which has a rich set of capabilities above and beyond CDS Project Oakdale. So Richard asked a great question, which is, how will the 2 GB data limit be managed within Oakdale, especially in the case of images and other larger data types? Great question. So what you will be able to do is you will be able to define your tables and then populate those tables with data, regardless of whether it's images, files, so on and so forth, up until you hit the 2 GB limit. At that point in time, you can make the choice to either delete unused data so that you stay under the 2 GB limit, or if all of that data is necessary, it's possible for you to upgrade your environment to support the full version of CDS. We have customers using the full version of CDS to store many, many terabytes of data, okay? So it's very, very scalable platform. However, that scalability does come with associated cost. Now, if you do upgrade your environment to the full version of CDS, what that will mean is that the users within that team will need to have paid Power Apps paid Power Apps licenses or other licenses which grant them entitlements to the full version of CDS. Abdul asks us a great question. Can use Power Apps for developing IoT end user experiences? And I think that you certainly could. In fact, we know of customers that bring data into whatever data source that they're using via connectors or other mechanisms, and then they build Power Apps over the top of that data source to support interaction with that data. Let's say that the IoT stream indicates that there's an issue with a refrigerator or something like that. They will then view that work item or work order within their Power App, and then they will go work to address that issue, perform an inspection, capture details from that inspection, perhaps with images or files, and then flag it as completed and move on to the next item. So we definitely do see people doing exactly what you just described. So let's see. Gregorio from Argentina asks us, given that now we have this new data source table atop CDS to build an app directly in Teams, how to decide when to use this versus a SharePoint list? Thanks. And I think that's a great question. When we think about tables as exposed by CDS Project Oakdale, they really are designed to store and support relational data, where you have lots of different types of tables that relate to one another, where you need things like referential integrity, where you want to do things like calculated fields, so on and so forth. When we look at lists, it is a great tool for lists. And so I think that they definitely have kind of two very clear, distinct use cases between the two of them. So hopefully I was able to answer your question. Richard asked, will Teams Power Apps be able to take advantage of component libraries? I assume, Richard, that you're asking about the Power Apps control framework, and the plan and the intention there is yes. In fact, some of the various controls that you saw in the demos today that look and felt like Teams, those actually leverage the PCF capabilities. So that's very much a part of our plan. In fact, you may be able to do it today. Not completely sure on that. I apologize. I guess I'm failing my expert title on that particular question. So hope that helped. Barbara asks, are all of these features available in October? Can we turn these features off at the tenant level until we are ready to introduce it to the organization? So these capabilities are available in preview right now. As far as what it means to disable them for your organization, it is possible to modify the permissions that users have so that they may not be able to do all of the things that we've demonstrated today. So hope I was able to answer your question there. Let's see. In Power Apps, you have two formats, tablet and phone. Does that mean one app to display on multiple devices? You need to create it in both formats. Or can you configure the app to dynamically change its layout depending on the device? So this is a great question. This is what we call a responsive app, in that the application responds to the form factor of the device on which it is viewed. Now, responsiveness is a capability that we've been working to bring to Power Apps for a while. And for when you're creating Power Apps within Teams, they are responsive by default. So hope I answered your question there, Sam. Let's see, Anonymous asked, do I need paid Teams subscription to develop Power Apps? Not necessarily, okay? When we look at things like CDS Project Oakdale, that does require paid Office subscriptions, which include Teams and Power Apps entitlements. But it's not necessarily the case that to get started with Power Apps, you have to have a paid SKU or paid environment. It is possible that you could sign up for the Power Apps community plan and get started there. So let's see. Daniel asks the question, is there a granular security permission model for Project Oakdale, like in CDS, where you can have fully custom security for each solution? And so, Daniel, today, as I mentioned earlier, the permissions in CDS Project Oakdale are fairly coarse in their nature. We will make them a bit more granular in nature. However, the full flexibility, and some might say complexity of the CDS security model will not be coming to Oakdale, okay? Things like complex hierarchical security, things like assigning permissions or roles to particular users. Those things won't be available. And one of the main reasons behind this is we really have tried to align the way that CDS Project Oakdale behaves with the team security model, in that you have team owners, you have team members, you have team guests, and those three different groups have a specific set of permissions within the CDS Project Oakdale environment. So it will become more robust than what it has today. However, it will not be have the full set of capabilities that we have with our full version of the Common Data Service. So I hope I answered your question, Daniel. Dennis asks us, with the integration into Teams, does it mean external users are able to have access to Power Apps? It's a great question, and my answer is it depends. It depends on the type of external users. If you're talking about guest users or principals which have been invited into an AD tenant, I think we used to call these foreign principals historically, then yes, you can launch a Power App. However, the way that you can join a Teams meeting as an unauthenticated user, those sorts of things, that will not be something that we support. We require you be an authenticated user in Azure Active Directory for you to be able to interact with the Power Apps that we put into Teams. Let's see. Sorry, taking a quick breath. Anonymous asks us, will there be an app owner, or is the app owned by the team? That's a great question. So when creating an app by default, it is owned by the creator. However, it is possible to change the owner of that application to either the team owners group or the team members group. I don't know if that experience is available just yet, but if not, it will be coming shortly. So let's see, the next question. Can you build portals for Project Oakdale? Great question, Daniel. Not at this time. Portals is something that requires the full version of the Common Data Service. Let's see, Anonymous is asking, could you have multiple Teams apps to share the same Project Oakdale app in case they share data? That's a good question. The way to look at it is like a team, and the environment within it is like a little silo. And so it's possible to deploy the same app to multiple teams, but it's not possible to have one app that then spans across multiple team environments. I mean, thinking about it, it might be possible to kind of build a bit of a Frankenstein that gets that to work, but that's not really the scenario that we intended when you're using this. So I don't know if it would provide the best experience. Let's see, I see a couple others. I think I've answered that question. Let's see, Sherwin is asking, is his understanding correct that only the team members would have access to the app, not possible to share outside of that team? So the answer to that is kind of. You would have to be either a team owner, a team member, or a team guest to be able to interact with the application. We have some other things that we're cooking up in the background here, but at least for right now, if you're one of those three folks, then you can interact with the application within Teams. Let's see, I think I've answered that question. So just to confirm, we can use Project Oakdale with a normal Teams license. Yes, if you have an Office license that includes Power Apps, in just about all scenarios, that includes CDS Project Oakdale. Devanya asks, what's the difference between Power Apps and Teams apps? So Power Apps is just one of many ways to build apps within Teams. It's designed specifically for, or I shouldn't say specifically, but it's targeted more towards what we call citizen developers. These are folks that are not professional developers by trade. We believe that if you can use Excel, if you can use PowerPoint, then you can build a Power App. And so because of the new integration that we have with CDS and Power Apps and Teams, or I should say CDS Project Oakdale, it makes it very, very easy for people who do not have a professional development background to be able to build applications, and in this case, build applications in Teams. When we look at Teams applications, that could also include applications that were built by professional developers using tools and techniques beyond Power Apps. So I hope I was able to answer your question. Mark asks, how will Oakdale access on-premises data? Will it use existing gateway clusters? So if you built an application within Teams in an Oakdale environment that happens to use a data source that's on the other side of an on-premises data gateway, then yes, that would be how you continue to interact with your on-premises data source. Let's see, Jonas is asking, can I make use of Oakland or CDS Lite and the free E5 dev tenant and make use of full CDS in a prod tenant? That's a good question, Jonas. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Of course, you'd have a different set of capabilities within your E5 environment, your Oakdale environment, than your CDS full environment. But as long as the capabilities that you're using kind of within the intersection of both of those capability profiles, I don't see why not. Let's see. Abdul is asking, in Power Apps, how can we dynamically add different data sources in app? So this is a great question. And when we think about how data sources are used in our applications, they are defined and bound at authoring time, typically, right? When you're building an app, you're building it saying, knowing, and understanding, okay, this application is going to be built against this particular table in Oakdale, or it's going to be built against this particular list in SharePoint, or it's going to be built against this particular Excel sheet. And a lot of that knowledge and understanding about the data source is actually burned into the application. It's not like you can trivially swap out Excel for Project Oakdale, because the two services have very different sets of capabilities. Now, one of the capabilities that is in the process of rolling out right now are what we call connection references, which is a way that if you are importing and exporting applications between different environments, we're able to parameterize certain aspects of the configuration between those different environments. So that, for example, when you needed to, you're in dev, you're using Excel sheet 1, and when you're in prod, you're using Excel sheet 10, you can go through and you can edit those connection string references as a part of that process. But generally speaking, once the application is authored and or imported, then the data sources are generally static until modified by a maker. Let's see. Oh, here's an easy one. Laco asked me, what's my full name? My last name is Jones. I'm embarrassed to tell you my middle name, so I won't tell you that. Barry asks a question. What's the roadmap for Power Apps portals and the Common Data Model, or CDM? So Power Apps portals, of course, is our web-based technology for building many times B2C type experiences where businesses can create portals for their customers to interact with. And Power Apps portals has massive investment, seeing massive growth. So we're continuing to invest because we're seeing amazing growth in usage there. When it comes to the Common Data Model is a metadata language that we use to describe the shape of data, as well as we use it to describe the shape of data that we use to operate the Dynamics businesses. And we continue to use the Common Data Model day in, day out, especially when it comes to how we deepen the link and the integration between Power Platform and Azure data services such as Azure Synapse. So I hope that I was able to answer your question. I think that we are getting very, very close on time. So I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time today to chat with me. I hope I was able to answer your questions. I know there were a few questions I didn't get to. I apologize for that, but thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Take care and have a good one. Bye-bye.